I'm Tanya Korin. I am co-lead for CINNergies, which is a creative and diverse community of early career researchers who share an openness and motivation to engage in interdisciplinary research. Today we will be discussing interdisciplinarity, and the first CINNergies episode I'm joining by Professor of Neuroscience Anastasia Christakou from the School of Psychology and Clinical Language Sciences. Anastasia studies the neurological and psychological mechanisms of adaptive behavior and learning. Anastasia's area of interests are learning and decision-making, development cognitive emotional interactions, neurochemistry, molecules to mind approaches in neuroscience. Anastasia trained in biology at Imperial College London and in behavioral neuroscience at Cambridge. After the completion of her PhD, Anastasia spent some time at the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience at UCL before moving to the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience at King's College London for further postdoctoral training. There, Anastasia worked in developmental cognitive neuroscience and psychopathology at the Social, Genetic and Developmental Psychiatry Center and trained in neuroimaging at the Center for Neuroimaging Sciences. Anastasia moved to Reading in 2009 to become a lecturer in developmental psychopathology and left briefly to train in computational modeling at Princeton Neuroscience Institute. In 2015, Anastasia was awarded a media fellowship by British Science Association and worked as a science journalist at Nature. At the University of Reading, Anastasia has been leading CINN, which is the Center for Integrative Neuroscience and Neurodynamics, since 2018, and has been named Professor of Neuroscience in 2020. Welcome, Anastasia. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your invitation. I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you. So what I was thinking, just looking at the description of all, it's a brief description, but just looking at the description of everything that you have done today, it already tells me of interdisciplinarity. So I thought we'll explore that further as today's topic is interdisciplinary research.
Wonderful.
So I was wondering, what is your understanding of interdisciplinarity?
That's a great question. I think you probably get as many definitions as people you ask, actually. But I mean, a broad definition might be the activities that bring together disparate strands of knowledge. Okay. And this could be either for the development of new knowledge itself or to solve a specific problem. And I think that the distinction between those two applications of interdisciplinarity is a really interesting thing to understand and explore.
Okay. What do you think interdisciplinary research means to you? And do you think it's important in today's world?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That goes back to that distinction that I made just a second ago. That one of the big draws for me personally is this idea that pluralism in knowledge generation is always creative. It opens up different ways of thinking about your specific area of interest, but about the world more generally and about how you go about doing your science, for example. But also then on the more practical side, interdisciplinary approaches can solve problems faster and more creatively with more lasting effects for society or even for specific organizations. And therefore, I do think that it should be promoted and it has a really big role to play in how we solve problems in today's society.
Okay, thank you. What do you think are the benefits and sort of the detriments to interdisciplinary research, if any?
Many, I fear. So the benefits are clear, both for the person, I think, who pursues interdisciplinary work, but also for society more generally. So an individual benefits by having this pluralism of understanding. They have a deeper, broader immersion into their subject of interest, but they can also bring novel insights from other disciplines into how they approach their own knowledge field, but they're also their problem-solving approaches. And for society, it goes without saying that, again, as I said before, the creativity that comes from that pluralistic approach is unparalleled. It's something that we can't expect to emerge from single disciplinary approaches. And this refers specifically to large societal issues like, climate and health, etc. But the cons are also quite substantial. And I think here mostly for the individual who is really motivated to engage in interdisciplinary research. And this is perhaps not something I should be necessarily talking about, but I think it's important that people go into it with their eyes wide open.
Absolutely.
So it's really challenging, right? It's challenging to engage with multiple disciplines with the same rigor and at the same depth. If you are committed to promoting new knowledge and solving important problems. And then the issue of disciplinary language is a huge obstacle to overcome. Absolutely. Where you have to learn to speak different languages in order to effectively interact with people from other disciplines. And this is not something that comes naturally to people as we train, especially through our undergraduate and postgraduate training years. We get entrenched in ways of working and ways of thinking and ways of speaking, which is really, really important. So those are, not trivial challenges that need to be overcome.
Absolutely. Do you think colleagues are now more open to interdisciplinarity, or there's still some reservation there?
I think there is reservation, broadly speaking. I think if you wanted a single word answer, I would say that there is some reservation. And this is not because it's interdisciplinarity is not valued. We see it valued everywhere, right? In the way, for example, funders call for it, institutions pay tribute to it in their initiatives, etc. So it is desirable. But I don't think it's entirely understood by the entire mechanics of the system of knowledge production, especially in academia and public funding arenas, etc. So there's another tension here. So there's something that you want, but you don't entirely know how to make the most of. I think that's where we are still at the moment.
Going back to your research, could you summarize your research and could you please walk us through where you have this interdisciplinary aspects coming into it?
Yeah. So I've been interested in how the brain works and what the nature of human behavior and thought might be in terms of its physicality and its relationship with the body. And that's been kind of the driving motivation, I guess, behind my training and research to date. And because that's the motivation, I've always had to deal with questions that are bigger or broader than the subject of study at any given time. For example, I would work with animal models and of behavior and dysfunction, and then I would work in developmental psychopathology, for example. But then solving or asking pertinent questions about the nature of the human nature itself calls for digging across disciplines that you're not familiar with. So that gave me a sense that I need to be more pluralist in how I understand the thing that I'm trying to understand. And although obviously you specialize as you train, you become an expert in this very, very narrow field as you train, and that's absolutely necessary. At the same time, it was very obvious to me that I had to be aware of insights from other corners of knowledge production. So I guess my research, as you said at the beginning in your kind introduction, is very concerned with how we change what we do and how we think based on what is happening to us. But also at a broader kind of timescale, at the developmental timescale, how do we become capable of different kinds of competences in terms of adaptive behavior as we develop through our journey through life? I'm especially interested in adolescent development, for example, and how what happens to the physiology of the brain and the body can trigger new competences to emerge during the developmental journey. So those are, really interesting questions. They have really interesting narrow questions that you can ask with neuroimaging as I do, or with mathematical modeling, etc. But understanding the developing human means that you have to ask, to be able to speak and understand the perspectives of other disciplines as well, from developmental psychology, philosophy, but also engineering, mathematics.
Of course,
all of that comes into play, and this is one of the reasons why cognitive neuroscience and developmental cognitive neuroscience in particular is such an interesting field of study, because it does allow you to bring all those pluralist ideas into the way you do your work.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel that now, from the experience that you had with interdisciplinarity, especially within your work, is there some skills that people need to develop, or they just naturally gain them just by engaging into interdisciplinarity?
So the single most important skill that somebody needs is curiosity.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's entirely fundamental to engaging in interdisciplinarity, because of the challenges I kind of briefly mentioned before, the difficulties with speaking another discipline's language, with this idea that obviously you need to have that kind of rigorous and in-depth understanding of multiple disciplines, which is not a trivial thing to try and undertake. But you have to have that key driving fundamental motivation that comes with curiosity. And that could take you a long way, given that you are embedded in the right environment.
Of course.
So alongside curiosity, ideally you want to be finding yourself in an environment that fosters that way of thinking and allows you the space and the time to do that kind of slow, important digging in places where you wouldn't, necessarily otherwise do.
This actually brings me nicely to my next question, which is, do you think university is promoting interdisciplinary research, and do you feel that they are also supportive of it?
Yeah, so the University of Reading has been at the forefront of being practical and pursuing initiatives that support, meaningfully interesting and important ways of working in research, such as interdisciplinarity, but also, open science, etc. So, and yes, they have, in a way, they have put their money where their mouth is, right? It's not a case of just paying tribute to something that appears attractive, but also they have been active at seeking ways to meaningfully impact in this space. And I think for example, the interdisciplinary research centers around the university that bring together people who otherwise would not have an opportunity to talk to each other are a very important initiative.
Again, this lovely brings me to another question. So we discussed the university and their support. I was wondering, you previously mentioned about the funding bodies and their interest in interdisciplinary work and interdisciplinary research. Do you think they, again, support it and encourage it and provide enough, whether it's funding or whether it's platforms, to take it further?
Yeah. That's a very, very good question, and unfortunately it's a non-trivial thing to solve as an ecosystem, I guess. I think we do need a very integrated approach. As I said earlier, everybody sort of has a sense, and kind of a nebulous sense, that interdisciplinarity must be a good thing. And there are very, very good practical real-life examples of where this has borne out to be the case. But often we find a disconnect between the kind of institutional enthusiasm for interdisciplinarity and the practical implementation of supporting it. Funders are not, unfortunately, shielded from that kind of bias. I think there's a lot of really interesting academic work exploring the challenges and opportunities of interdisciplinarity, which could have a lot to say in this space, but I don't think the mechanics of our funding ecosystem has caught up with those insights. I think that's a key blind spot. And also funders operate at different timescales. Interdisciplinarity necessarily slows things down. It has to slow things down. It slows down training. You need more time to train to the same rigor and depth as an interdisciplinary scholar. It slows down the execution of especially primary research, sort of blue skies research. It's great because you have to integrate all these strands of knowledge. And so I don't know that there is a funding scheme out there that necessarily takes those particulars into account. And often, one-off funding offerings, which, for example, a call for an interdisciplinary approach to solve a specific problem, will take researchers out of their trajectory, right? They will slow them down. They will change their publication record. They will change the way they look in promotion committees, for example, right? So there's no alignment between our appetite for interdisciplinarity and the way we kind of approach it institutionally, in terms of our reward system for interdisciplinary scholars, understanding of fundamental understanding of what it takes to do interdisciplinary research. So there's a way to go, I think, in kind of bringing all of this together. But that said, there is a lot of appetite. So for somebody who is curious, is prepared to work with the rigor and depth that is needed across disciplines, and is lucky enough to be placed in an institution that can provide that sort of environment, there are opportunities there to be funded and pursue kind of this pluralist and disciplinary approach.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. So you feel that there is future in interdisciplinarity?
I think we must pursue the interdisciplinary future, because that's where a lot of the answers that we need to be working towards lie.
Oh, fantastic. Do you think there is anything that you could give to an early career researcher as advice how to engage with interdisciplinarity and how to maybe just start their journey?
That's a really great question. It does tie into the complaint that I just made a moment ago about the career and reward structure that we have, especially in academia, which is not entirely aligned with the needs of somebody who's pursuing explicitly interdisciplinary work. What I would say to an early career researcher is that they need to make decisions that have to be made with their eyes wide open. So they have to understand how they need to progress their early career training, that becoming an expert in a discipline is really important in your early stages, while at the same time fostering your interest in interdisciplinarity. If you do have the curiosity, there will be opportunities for you to engage, but making sure that you have that rigorous in-depth training in your discipline has to come first.
Okay.
Without that, then you become less attractive a partner in interdisciplinary collaboration, for example.
Yeah.
So there are, and also, in terms of just promoting your career and getting opportunities to further your training that will enable you to then engage in meaningful, large-scale interdisciplinary collaborations, you need to put yourself in a position where you are an attractive partner that can bring disciplinary expertise to the table. So it's not to say go against your instincts to pursue interdisciplinarity, but be mindful that in order to do it well, you need to bring, yes, your curiosity and your pluralist approach, but also your in-depth training in your own discipline, such that you can then harness the benefits of interdisciplinary engagement.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. How do you think CINNergies can help promote interdisciplinarity in the University of Reading and beyond?
Yeah, I think CINNergies is one of my favorite initiatives in any academic environment, because it asks the question, right? Asking the question, what is good and what is challenging about engaging in interdisciplinary research? Just trying to explore that space is really, really helpful. Just engaging with because there's a lot of academic activity that tries to understand what it means to execute, manage, fund, administer interdisciplinary work. And CINNergies can play a part in bringing all of that knowledge and all of that, inquiry into the practice of the university.
Absolutely.
And I think early career researchers are, and students as well, are often by nature curious, and they haven't been entrenched in a way of thinking yet from their disciplinary journey. And so harnessing that curiosity and bringing them into, giving them the opportunity to exchange ideas and see over the parapet of their siloed discipline. What else is there? What other ideas are relevant to the things that I'm interested in? That is a hugely, hugely important role that CINNergies can play.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us and
Thank you.
giving us the time, and obviously such amazing experience and all of the outlook and the future, also hope for the future. And hopefully we'll have you again here again.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.